All right. Welcome to Willing to Fail. I'm your host, Peyton Bennett, as usual. Today, we have a very special guest, one of my favorite rappers. He has over 252 million streams on just Spotify alone. His platinum hit All Night Longer has over 63 million streams on Spotify alone. So without further ado, welcome to the show, Sammy Adams. How are you?
What up? What up? What's going on?
Not much. Appreciate you joining us.
Of course.
So just real quick, kind of the basis of this podcast is just, I like to see just your full journey, because obviously for someone like you that's in the spotlight, I know like as a young kid, we all look up to like musicians, athletes as like these superhero type people, right? But they're always real humans that have lived the journey, and there's a lot of it behind that we don't know. So for you, I just want to start from the beginning. I think I saw you're born and raised in Boston, right?
Yeah, born and raised in Cambridge.
Okay.
Cambridge, Mass. Yeah, it all really started at a pretty young age. Just, like we had a piano in my house. My dad was a drummer. Very musical family overall. So kind of having that piano around, I was always curious about it. Did a bunch of, years of classical training that never really panned out, because like it was always just like kind of just like it was like too mathematical for me, like too by the book. And then I had one teacher who like basically told me to bring all my books, put them in an aluminum trash can and lit them all on fire, and taught me how to improvise. And that's really what got me to where I'm at, because like in college, even in high school, while we were supposed to be doing computer lab, I was on like Fruity Loops making beats, and then Apple dropped Logic and PC dropped Pro Tools. So it was cool, because then instead of having to have like a cello player or a quartet come to the studio, you press one button and you have the whole thing at your fingertips on keys. So that really got me into production. And then after that, I just kind of felt like writing my own beats was the wave, because like I would sell beats to people, and they would do their thing, and not that I would ever hate on that, but I realized that like you over your own production, you understand it more, the landscape of how it moves, how it flows. So that's how I kind of got my start. I mean, even on YouTube, I was always rapping over Lil Wayne beats and dubstep beats and EDM stuff, and really not trying to pigeonhole myself into just rap or just pop. So it's been an interesting journey from there, because you learn so much about the music industry, and tons of lessons there, both positive and negative. And we still here. So
you guys literally lit all your books on fire with your piano teacher.
Literally lighter fluid, match, bomb, everything gone.
And how old were you then?
I think I was like 11, 12.
Okay.
So it was cool, but maybe a little bit older, like 13, 14. But it was great, because that gave me like a new insight to how to work. And like playing by ear and playing by just improvisation has always been so much more enjoyable to me personally.
Yeah, makes sense. So you were starting and making music, it seems like from a really young age. I know the last episode I interviewed Cal Shapiro. I don't know if you know who that is from Time Flies. Yeah. He was telling me that a big thing for him was just getting out of his own way of like mentally like putting himself out there. Was that a big process for you too? Or were you just been in music so long it felt natural?
I mean, the whole landscape of music changes. So I think, I was kind of thrown into it. Not thrown into it, I kind of threw myself into it in college. And like, we had this like kind of campus chat thing at Trinity called Trin Talk, and like two of my friends, one of my best friends who was my roommate, dropped I Hate College without the second verse on it, and I was like, bro, what the fuck? And it just kind of spread like wildfire, and then that gave me the courage to just keep making music and put stuff out. I had a bunch of people that always threw parties, and whether it was like a frat or just a big house party or an event or a mixer, you could go and kind of like use that as a sounding board for the music you were making. And that was a huge part of the success of Boston's Boy, was that we were touring it up and down the Northeast at colleges, and, basically anyone who took us, whether it was a dirty frat basement or just like someone's living room where we could set up some shit, do a show. So that gave me a lot of confidence just right off the rip. And then, Boston's Boy doing well, kind of just catapulted me right into the music industry. So I definitely understand the getting in your own way part, especially like during COVID too. It took me a couple of months to kind of break out of the like writer's block zone, if you will. But yeah, it's definitely, the music industry is so political, and there's a lot of things that people don't know about the music industry per se, just in terms of the general public, the common knowledge of it. So, like I said, both positive and negative lessons, but getting yourself out there, it's the only way to sink or swim.
Yeah. And I got a couple of questions for you later about like the music industry and your experience and Boston's Boy, but let's go back to like the I Hate College remix, because I know that's where I first heard of you. It's probably where most people first heard of you. You were in college at that point, and you were still playing like soccer for the university, right?
Yeah, I was in school, recorded it in the closet in my dorm room, and was captain of the soccer team, going to school, going on the road, playing shows, which was like kind of a problem at first, because like teachers just think it's an excuse. And then I'm like, all right, well, here's me with Kanye and Kid Cudi. So it's not a lie. But luckily I had a super cool coach who was like down for the cause in terms of, keeping my parallels open. It's like, let's be honest, I'm not about to go play like in UEFA Champions League. So, gonna keep it open. And then I got injured, which gave me, was kind of a blessing in disguise, because it gave me a lot more time to work on music. And then from there, it was just like full head of steam, make as many records as we can. Luckily had an affordable studio at that point, that I didn't have to worry about like my roommate doing non-suitable for work things behind me while I was recording. But yeah, it was crazy. It was a crazy time to be like a captain and a student and then like a touring act. So it was tough to juggle, but it was also like kind of the challenge. It was fun.
Yeah, it seems like a lot going on. So you said you did the I Hate College and then Boston's Boy, and you said that gave you the confidence to go forward. Were there any like pinch me moments where you're like, man, this is really happening, like this is going to be the rest of my life? Or was it just kind of a slow process that you're like, oh, well, I'm really doing this?
I think it was a little bit of a mix of like just pure like elation, and then a lot of shock, because like when we went #1 on iTunes, I think we were like #5 when we took off from Boston Logan, or it might have been New York, I forget which one. And then like in the air, like this is how old my ass is, like Wi-Fi was like exciting on planes. So like to see us go to #1 in the air on the way to LA with like a bunch of people, lined up, like never thought I'd be going to eat breakfast with Jimmy Iovine, or, sit in a meeting with, L.A. Reid and Jody Gerson and Mike Karen and Dr. Dre and all these amazing people. Like, just it was like a whirlwind in terms of like from being a college student into like the most sought after person. So that was definitely a shock.
Okay. And you went, I don't know much about Trinity College. I imagine it's not a very big college. What was that like?
No.
Did it change really quickly for you? Like going on campus and going to class, like being recognized, or did no one even know then?
It was kind of like a slower process. Like, some people already knew I was making music. Some people knew more than others. Like obviously the people I lived with, like my kind of inner crew, knew that there were bigger things to come. But it was kind of like, you have the people that are like definitely know about it, but they're like too cool to recognize it.
Yeah.
Which I could care less. Like if you know who I am or you recognize me and you don't say anything, it's not like I'm gonna look over my shoulder like, what the fuck, bro?
You probably prefer that.
Yeah, exactly. Especially nowadays. But like I would say it was pretty even keel in terms of, some people were like super infatuated with like just the journey and wanted to hear the stories, and then other people were just like, bugging me for new music all the time. So it definitely put a little bit more pressure on me to um, create, and then that can cause, like I said, a couple roadblocks and writer's block and all these other things. But really overall, it was a really cool moment, because a lot of people went from being like, yeah, good luck being a white rapper, to like, yo, congrats, that shit's dope. It's like, yeah, well, it's like, fuck you, but thanks.
Amazing. So the Boston's Boy, were you just recording that whole album like on Logic on your MacBook, or were you renting out studio time to do that one?
So we me and Maddie Harris, who like, helped co-produce the whole album, or some of the album, and then did like all the mixing and stuff. He was like the resident engineer of a studio called Cyber Sounds in Boston, and Hartford was only about an hour and a half away from home for me. So we just traveled back and forth once we kind of got a good rapport going, and started making some cool records. And then I would use this thing that is as old as time.
Same one.
Same one, yeah. That like Driving Me Crazy, Coast to Coast, Coming Up, all those joints were made right on that. And then I'd come up with these ideas, and then we would just take them to the studio and build the beat out first, and then I'd have a couple ideas for songs and stuff like that. And that's kind of how we kind of used the campus and the university and the shows we were doing as sounding boards for new songs. And that kind of turned into how we started to release stuff in the future, even with major labels, like test out, the product on your main demo, and see what the reaction is. And sometimes you get it totally wrong. You're like, that shit did not slap at the show. And then you put it out and you're like, holy shit, this thing is moving. But that's always been something that was super helpful for me, to just be able to play it for people, not only just like in a car or on the aux cord, like actually play it live and see how it develops and see what the reaction is. And then that kind of goes hand in hand with improving your live show and sounding as good as you can, because I think the quality of music in terms of rap and hip hop and melodic rap is more about the check than it is about how good your show is these days.
Yeah. So were there any songs you put out that you were like expecting to be bangers that didn't perform, and some songs you're like, I feel okay about it and end up overperforming?
A couple, like some of my favorite records with like visuals and stuff, they'll always be my favorites. And like surprisingly, like my song I Wish is one of them. And it's crazy because like the songs do well on streaming. I think it's at like 7 or 8 million now, but like we were kind of late to all the DSPs to upload stuff, because I had some legal issues with just some of the songs and some of the partners I was working with at the time. But those songs, it's crazy because when you play them live, you don't expect people to like be like, oh, this fucking I Wish, I love this song, and then sing it word for word. And it's like, as an artist, you have bangers, you have songs that people probably recognize and probably think of you when that song comes on. And then you have songs that are more introspective and more deep and meaningful than telling a bartender to make that motherfucker stronger.
Yeah.
So it's cool to see that side of really like building a fan base and seeing them sing like word for word these songs that don't have the 200 million streams on them, but to see other people really relate to them is cool. And any like uplifting type of song that I've done, the response has always been insane, because I've felt so many times in my career like just giving up and letting letting my doubts and letting naysayers win. And then there's always something that pulls you back in, because success is the best revenge without a doubt. So like those are just a couple, but yeah, I don't know if anything like really underperformed or like overperformed expectations. I think one of the most important things about the music industry, especially for managers and new artists, is you have to manage those expectations of how hard it is these days, how oversaturated music is. Mm-hmm. And B, the ways people find it. Back then, we're finding songs on YouTube and, Two Dope Boys and Hot New Hip Hop and Pigeons and Planes and all these like blogs that people don't, I guess they go to them now, not Two Dope Boys, but Pigeons and Planes still afloat. And like, finding music was a whole new thing. Like I remember the first time I found Kid Cudi and I was like, holy shit, like I'm gonna be listening to this dude till I'm fucking 70. But yeah, it's a different process, but I think, like I said, managing your expectations is super important, because if you expect like to drop a single and then be selling out MSG or like even a 5K amphitheater, the likelihood of that happening, unless you're like Olivia Rodrigo, are very slim to none.
Okay, so all about managing expectations. Another thing you mentioned that was interesting in that was you're saying you're always just like everybody in life, you have your ups and downs and your doubts, and you say for you, like the best revenge is just like sticking the success to the naysayers. Is that like nowadays, is that what you're finding is your biggest motivation? Or like, I don't know if you've heard the phrase, like digging in your bag of whys, like what keeps you going? Like in those down parts, is that what you're digging into? Or are there other things like your legacy or name that is motivating you?
I would say that was something that took me a couple of years to kind of overcome, which is like, just really not caring what anyone says or thinks in terms of music. If you like the song, you like the record, the whole camp likes the record. More likely than not, your fans and your fan base are going to rock with it too. I'm not really big on proving haters wrong. I'm more on the train of proving people that believe in you right. Just because that is so much more important. And like, a lot of people will have like 1,300 comments and then 8 bad ones, and those are the ones they write back to. And like, it took me a little while to understand that too, because like you can imagine the level of hate, and this is even before a lot of these social media platforms were even out. So I never really pay attention to haters. Like it's kind of just like one of the inevitable things that'll happen if you reach any type of success in any industry or any business ever. Like I'm sure people talk to you like about like, yo, your show isn't even all that fucking good. And that's like, sick, dude. Thanks for the comment. Thanks for wasting your time, But yeah, it's like for me, it's never really been about proving people wrong, but success being the best revenge just means that kind of everyone's satisfied except for them. So, you kind of kill 2 birds with 1 stone with big up in your fans and doing what they believed you could do. And at the same time on the low being like, fuck you.
Yeah. So when you first started, was your motivating like to be successful, or was it just like love in the process, love making music and just keep doing it? And that's just what happened.
It was all just passion. Like back then I had, I think I still have the actual, yeah. So before Apple, even though I worked for them, so I'm not going to talk shit, before they switched all these to the tiny USB joints, I had to use like a Logic key to get into Logic Pro. So it was like a USB to get into the program, because it was like a very sought after program. And my boys would literally steal the key out of my computer and make me go out with them. Like one of them would have it around their neck on like a chain like this. And they'd be like, I'll give it back to you. You have to come out until like 2 or 3. And so I'd go out, probably have a few more drinks than I should, and come back, and like there would be my key like on my table. I'd be like, you motherfucker. So
So you're
Um,
obsessed.
yeah, I was obsessed. And just like kind of growing from GarageBand, Fruity Loops to GarageBand, back to Fruity Loops, and then getting this keyboard, which like you could, once I learned how to record full like patterns and full beats on the keyboard, I was just like obsessed, because the next thing you're doing is like searching for the next beat pack, searching for the next instrumental, or searching for the next like string or bass or perfect sounding piano to start out a new record. And so it was really love of music. I never expected to have success in the music industry, especially after I think we shopped Boston's Boy to like 10 entertainment attorneys, and they all said it wasn't commercially viable music. So, you know, at that point, I didn't really have any expectations for any type of success, because I was kind of like, I just got absolutely walked like a dog in New York City. So it was all just about passion, and then, you know, some of the stars aligned, and the music was made that really connected with people, and you know, it was super cool to see it naturally and organically grow,
Yeah.
not just get tossed into, you know, the label circuit and you do 9,000 laps and 6,000 radio shows, and then bang, like you have a hit. So it felt good to do it ourselves.
Yeah. And that's what I was going to ask is how has your experience been with like meeting with labels, going through the whole business of music once you started getting a little notoriety?
I mean, it was great. It was very shocking. You know, it was super humbling to be in label meetings with all those people I mentioned, and be in the studio with like Pharrell and people. So it was all a big like I don't know, it felt so surreal that this type of shit was happening. And like the music just continued to grow with whoever I was in the studio with, or whoever wanted to meet up with me. You know, it's like any business relationship, there's, you know, ebbs and flows, and there's highs and lows in terms of what you expect them to do, what they expect you to do. So you know, the major label side of things is just, it's very weird to go from making all your own music to like having all these people pulling you in different directions and saying like, you know, we could probably do this if we go this pop, or go this if we go super urban. And, you know, you never really think of those logistics, because it's like micro, macro, that's a manager's job. I'm like, fuck micro, macro. I'm trying to make this whole damn song, and make it to the point where it's good enough for me to be confident to put it out. And that was a huge part of the kind of major labels and meeting with some of these moguls, is that it really shows you who you are. Like, because I remember playing songs that they thought were hit records that I just literally did a demo, and it was like from my room. I was like, fuck, I'm gonna play this, and this dude's gonna be like, what the fuck is this? And it turns out to be his favorite song. So you know, lots of ups and downs in terms of the actual professional music industry, but I have no qualms. I hold no grudges. I'm appreciative for kind of every relationship I've had, because it's made me stronger as just a man and stronger as an artist. And you know, at the same time, like, while you do make music for, you know, in a sense, success, it's all for the fans. And when it's a song that you get down with, your core fans will be on board. So
that's what it seems like. It's most important, just staying true to your sound and your fans. So you mentioned a bunch of names of people you worked with, like you met with Pharrell and Dr. Dre, and I know you've worked, I saw the thing in the back behind you, you worked with Enrique Iglesias, you worked with Mike Posner, Mike Stud, I know you, B.O.B. I know he did that remix with you. What is something you've learned from some of those guys that you still think of or take with you, or like some of those people you've looked up to in the industry?
I mean, every single one of like the 5 days I was in the studio with Pharrell, it's like basically like an entire interview because I was just like, I think I filled up like a whole Supreme notebook of just like quotes from Pharrell. But you know, all of them have um, different characteristics that I never had, that either I never could like obtain, just like, you know, just because of who I am. Like me and Mike are very different people, but we're also like very good friends. So it's kind of like, he reminds me of one of my best friends. Like we couldn't be any more different besides the fact that we make music, but we just get along super well. And, you know, he put me on to B Major and Black Bear and a bunch of other people. Not even in terms of relationships, just like in terms of music and stuff. And you know, you just learn a lot from other people, and collaborating is super scary at first because, you know, the first time you collab with someone, you want to come with the straight heat, and you know, sometimes it just doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it takes a few days for you to hit a lick and really tap into that side of it. So it's a, you know, with like B.O.B. to Enrique to Mike to Pharrell to anyone really, it's always just like a be here, be present right now type of moment, because, you know, as much as you playing a bunch of records and telling stories and shit matters, you already know all those. So like for me, it's always been like, just shut up and listen.
Yeah.
Because they, you know, they had a bunch of success and different successes than me, and especially B.O.B. and Urban. Enrique is literally a fucking superstar worldwide. And so is Mike, and you know, obviously Pharrell's probably one of the biggest goats in hip hop. So you know, it's like his favorite quote of mine was like if this record isn't you, this record will never be yours. And so like for that, it's very simple, but it's also extremely deep when you have a record like Posner had a record, and a bunch of other people have had records where they don't necessarily like that record that much, and that's the record that goes off, and then you got to play that shit 2,000 times a year.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like it's also getting to know yourself. I think a lot of us were thrown into the music industry and got ourselves, you know, notoriety in college, and we're 19, 20 years old. So like you got to grow up fast, and you got to realize how people move and how people work, and that, you know, everything's like sunshine and fucking rainbows before you sign a deal, and then after you sign a deal, it's like you're like literally in Game of Thrones, like behind the wall.
Yeah. So I was gonna ask like kind of what your day-to-day life, like I know for you it's obviously very, very different day to day, but
Yeah.
because it reminded me, because you had a lot of quotes from Pharrell. Cal in my last interview was talking about what he learned from Pharrell for just how to get out of a creative rut was just to change your like environment, like just that's why like in the shower while you're driving, just being somewhere different. So there's two questions for you. What do you do if you're in a creative rut to boost your creativity? And then two, like what are some things, like some staples of your routine that you do that helps you be more productive?
Um, anything to break out of writer's block. Like I try to take as much time out of this room, out of whichever studio we're cutting in, to do everything but music. Uh, literally do anything, like, you know, like going on a run, working out, doing stuff that, you know, is taxing on your body physically. Not necessarily doing anything mentally challenging because you're already kind of fighting that uphill battle. But really just getting away from everything creative. Like it's hard sometimes, and I'm sure Cal feels the same way, and a lot of artists do that. You're always kind of thinking of what the next line or the next song or the next something could be. And to turn that off, you know, we'd all probably pay $1 million to have a switch in the back of our head to just shut off thinking. So it's easier said than done, but like, you know, honestly, for me, working out or just like taking a drive to the beach and going and chilling, you know, just doing stuff that, like, for me, I like like sensory deprivation really helps me. So like you said, stuff about like the shower and being on planes and trains, your sensory, you know, your sensory kind of activators are like different. So when it's raining outside, I tend to like be more creative. Like I write a lot of songs on planes. I write a lot of songs on trains. I don't write songs while I drive because I would be in a fucking 17 car pileup. Um, but but yeah, it's like it's interesting because getting out of writer's block, the hardest thing is not trying to think about getting out of writer's block.
Yeah.
So
I think
it's
what
like,
you're saying, yeah, but the working out makes the most sense because I mean, if you're in a really, really tough workout, all you can think about is just breathing and being right there. Like you're not thinking about
exactly.
music when you're just huffing and puffing like in the middle of a tough workout. So that makes sense. For you, you said you write on planes. How much of you when you're recording, how much of it is written down? All of it, or do you mix a little freestyle?
It depends. A lot of the stuff I've been doing lately is kind of just like off top. It's a lot more melodic stuff. So a lot of it is more, you know, getting melodies down, getting harms down and stuff that don't necessarily have words to them yet. But getting those ideas, it's like I've learned my lesson multiple times where it's like it's worth it to just roll over, grab your iPhone and write this line down, because the whole like, oh, it's so fire, I'll remember it in the morning thing does not fucking work.
Yeah.
Trust me. So that's definitely something I've learned, but a lot of it's kind of a mixture because like, you know, working at Apple Music's helped me a lot because doing hosting shows and like introducing songs and coming out of songs, you know, doing research without writing stuff down. Like you got to do it on the spot live, and it has to be, you know, something cool about the artist, something about the song, something you like, and it has to be succinct and it has to be, you know, kind of proper. And that's taken me a long time to get used to because I'm not used to being like a radio personality or you know, a host of anything. So that's been really great for my writing process because you know, it's like besides having the pen and the pad, I feel like a lot of people, at least that I see in studio sessions and B-roll, it's like always an iPhone in front of your face. And I've never been able to really invoke like the feeling and emotion behind my bars or behind my hooks or records if I'm just reading.
Okay.
Like you can play me 2 takes of me reading it and then me not reading it, and it's like night and day in terms of how I hear it. Because I think when you read something, it takes a little bit of the soul out of it. And like, you know, having it also just like ready to go. It's like, I think, you know, Nas and Jay-Z were some of the biggest influences on me. It's like, damn, these dudes didn't write any of this shit down. Like how? I mean, like especially Hope. Like I know Nas works differently than that. But like Illmatic's one of my the number one project in my opinion. But yeah, it's like those type of things are. It kind of just depends on what mood you're in, because like not writing stuff and just getting ideas down is super helpful. Because you get stuff down that you know you can't unless you're doing like a voice note in your notepad on your phone. Can't really do that. And you don't have effects on your phone and all the stuff that you actually have on your computer. So getting a lot of like rough draft stuffed out and just ideas. And then, you know, you might not have the same idea the next day, but it could flow perfectly into the next 4 bars or like the next 8 bars or a pre-hook or a post-hook. So just kind of like experimenting. That's what this last 12 years has been about. It's just really, you know, throwing anything I have, you know, at whatever DAW I'm using, like Logic, Pro Tools, Fruity Loops, whatever. Not like throwing shit at the wall and seeing what sticks, because there'd be a lot of shit on my wall that doesn't stick. But yeah, just getting out your creative ideas, and sometimes they work, sometimes they don't, and sometimes they work for another song. So it's always good to just kind of like, you know, I always think of myself as a vehicle for the universe. So it's like, I'm not ever really writing any of this shit. I'm just the vehicle that's putting it together. So definitely a cool place to be at.
That's a cool way to look at it. Yeah, it sounds like, I mean, for music, it sounds like it's the same for like even podcasting or doing speeches. Is like you want to write down ideas when you have them, but like reading it off of it's not going to be effective in anything. If you can just
Of
memorize some of
course.
the things you wrote down and put it together on the spot, it's going to be a lot better.
Yeah, I mean, it also goes hand in hand with, for people that are just starting to make music now. It's like you are not the president of the United States, so there's not going to be a teleprompter on show.
Mm.
Like, reading your lyrics across. Like, so this isn't like The Masked Singer or wherever they can kind of read the lyrics off the back. But it's all a process, and it's all what works for you. Like a lot of the coolest stuff, in my opinion, is just hearing other people's processes and see what works for them. And like in my head, I'm thinking like, this guy's fucking nuts. Like, it's like Swizz Beatz has 51 Grammys, but the way he talks about making beats is like fucking chaotic to me. It's like,
Yeah.
I need to take like a beta blocker out to listen to that, because he makes it sound like it's so easy, and it's like it's not. Like, it's not that easy, bro. Like, you're making it seem so easy, and you're so good at it. But
That's what the greats make it look easy. Yeah, I always like
exactly.
I like seeing people's process, like just seeing clips on the internet. Like I see clips of like Post Malone, and he'll just like hum out the harmonies and the melodies before he puts the words in. Then you'll see those like famous clips of like Jay-Z when he just like hears the beat, like makes that stink face, and then just like goes in and does the dirt off your shoulders. For you, is there any like moments in the studio that like gave you chills, or you knew in that moment something magical was happening that sticks out to you?
Yeah, I mean, there's always like certain parts of songs that I'm just like obsessed with. And like my engineer isn't, because he's like, yo, we got all the takes, bro. And I'm like, just a couple more, just for good measure, but yeah, I think a lot of the more introspective stuff, like I remember writing Boston's Boy and living in LA for 6 months. It's the most time I'd spent on the West Coast, and writing Just Love Here, which, a lot of people call like the sleeper record of that project. I remember like, literally having tears in my eyes about missing the homies, missing my family, and this being a totally different world that, you've kind of thrown yourself into. But at the same time, it's like happy tears, it's confused, it's homesick tears. And those type of moments are like, you're incredibly lucky to be in front of a mic, because you really invoke all that passion, like I was telling you before. And it's like that's when you don't have to write stuff down. That's when you can just kind of pour out your soul and figure out, how to comp it later with your engineer and whatnot. But those moments that really like hit you right here, they're few and far between. And like, when you make a hit, you have a hit. Like, that's a great feeling. But the stuff that like no one's gonna say no to writing a hit, because I'm pretty sure everyone's pretty stoked, and it hits you right here and in your bank account. So
Yeah.
it's great. But I think a lot of the just process of making music has been super eye-opening to me, just in regular life too, about things to not take for granted, and just not closing the door to anything that's super different from your usual kind of, I guess, like regime or regimen or whatever you do day to day from Monday to Sunday. So we work a little differently in the music industry. Sometimes we have sessions from 1 a.m. to noon, and then other times it's like noon to 6 p.m. So I tend to like to work during the day more now, but for about 6-7 years we were 8 p.m. to 6 a.m. every day.
You feel like you're more creative at night or during the day?
It's a toss up. I think during the days is kind of like a easier time to stay like what I call forced focused. And it's like, everyone else is working, so why not work? And then, I could be trying to fall asleep at 1 a.m, and for some reason just like line after line after a bar is just coming to my head. So you got to kind of be open to it and like realize that, you know, especially from like working from home and everything, like your hours don't really matter in terms of this industry. So you know, the social constructs of time don't necessarily infringe on independent artists really. But I would say nighttime weirdly is creative when I'm literally not trying at all.
Usually how it goes.
And then, you know, after that, what's great is you wake up in the morning and you have, you know, a couple full songs that you get to test out and get done. So it's kind of 50-50, but a lot of the creative happens at night. And like, just like I said, doing random shit. Like I was going to pick up like plants and soil from Home Depot the other day, and I wrote like a whole hook while this dude's like, you know, cutting this whole piece of like lawn for me. And I'm like, why here? Why
Yeah.
now? Like what was it about? You know, all these power tools and shit around that like made me just think of something that's totally unrelated to a Home Depot or, you know, like home improvement.
Yeah. It's just a whole different
Besides,
environment.
yeah, exactly. So it really just comes and goes. Like I said, you know, it's like you got to kind of just got to kind of open up the book and let the page come to you.
Yeah. So for you, is there anything like, before I ask about like what you're doing now and in the future, like looking back at your journey? I mean, like you said, the stars aligned, a lot of things worked out really well, but obviously no journey's perfect. If there's
Of course.
anything, one thing you could change or any regrets or anything that you would tell your younger self, or would you leave it all the same?
Um, yeah, I mean, I've always kind of said this in the past too. I wish I dropped like a sequel to Boston's Boy 2 before signing to a label. Because we just had such a crazy independent movement going on. And it was eye-opening for everyone, like us. It was eye-opening for me. The industry definitely was not ready for that to happen. And they obviously made that pretty known, like from lawsuits to people paying PR companies to slander my shit. I wish we stayed on course to just like drop a Boston's Boy 2 or do something, because the drastic switch up of, you know, signing to a label is that you have expectations from promo, you have expectations from the president, your A&R, everybody. So you're really trying to please everyone. And our whole motto back in the day was like, we don't make this for anyone but ourselves. So that was a big, it was a big thing. And like, you know, everything's 2020 in hindsight. And it's, you know, it's like, oh, if we did this, we could be here, blah, blah, blah. And it's, you know, overall, like the way I look at it is, I couldn't be any more full of like gratitude and more appreciative of the fact that I've been able to reach so many people, and that, you know, everyone that worked at RCA worked their best, you know, most of them, and to do their job and get this music out and everything. And you know, it's like a lot of people say it's like 1 in a fucking million for this ever to happen. Trust me, I heard that a lot more times than I did once I had like a hit record. So no real regrets, to be honest. I think don't be such a hard head, never respond to people with negativity, you know, and just everything else. It's kind of just been like an overall lesson on life, that things come and things go. But I've always thought the music industry has this interesting like mantra of like, you know, if you have your moment in 6 months, like you only get one grand opening and then you're done. And I think like with all these social media platforms and all these DSPs and stuff, I think there can be multiple moments for multiple artists. I don't think anything is ever set in stone. I mean, there's like 10 songs on the show that I host on Apple that are like all hitting the charts because of TikTok trends.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like crazy how much the game has changed. But you know, I think in terms of like a a standpoint on how I look back at the past, it's all just been lessons, you know, no hard feelings, no grudges or anything. Just lessons learned, and, you know, what not to do in the future. And, you know, really growing up and being a man and learning how to not point fingers and take accountability and responsibility for some shit you might have fucked up on, and some shit that your team might not necessarily have communicated as well with the label or with whoever we were working with. So more so than anything, just personal growth and just like growth of the business and learning lessons to, you know, further down the road, just bring us more success and more fans, more shows, and keep pumping out music.
So what was I mean, like you said, the music industry is always obviously changing. It was much different time then, but when you made the decision to sign to a label, what was like the decision-making process on what label you wanted to go with? Like, what was important to you, and what was the reason you even signed? Was it just for like, felt like the next thing, or was it for the money and access to the more volume or better artist?
It was crazy because, you know, like I said before, it was just like meeting with everyone. And every one of these people was like, just like not even above my head. Like, you can't even see how high these people were. And for me, growing up in neighborhood I did, like, you know, signing a deal means you made it, which is like something I always think about, because it's interesting, because signing a deal, yeah, in some sense, for a lot of people, you made it to a label, and then now you have to deal with the label. But a lot of it was just that, just to reach more people. That was the original goal. And, you know, to go from having 100,000 fans to having 2 million fans, and, you know, using radio opportunities back when it was FM and not DSPs, radio opportunities, promo, you know, PR, using every single person, every single, you know, subunit of that building to build this thing that we've already kind of, you know, planted the roots and actually started to grow out of. And, you know, the money's always nice and shit, but it's never really been about that at all. Like, you make a lot more money from doing things you love, like touring and playing shows, than the label will ever pay you. Well, besides the first signing check, that's different.
What'd you spend that one
on? Nothing really. I've never really like gone extravagant and bought anything crazy. Just like, you know, property here and there, and kind of just invested my money. Definitely wasted a lot of money.
You have to waste some of it.
Exactly. So, but yeah, I mean, you know, it's crazy because there's no real reason why we signed. It just kind of felt right, and, you know, the team felt right after doing our due diligence with my attorneys and, you know, a bunch of people. Like, I was going to sign to Jimmy Iovine and Troy Carter on a joint venture, and it was like, literally, by the time you put out album 3, you'll be underwater. So it's all like logistical stuff that you have to think of. And, you know, not just, it's like, I don't want to be like driven around on a circus tour and be this like dog and pony show for you guys to, you know, just throw at whatever festival, whatever money lines up for you guys, you know. So, I mean, money, like I said, it comes and it goes, and it's never really been a huge deal until you have to start paying for your own studio time and like actually build the studio out and get products and hardware and all that stuff. But yeah, there was no real reason to sign to a label besides the fact that it just felt right at the time. And I can't say that like some of my managers and attorneys definitely weren't looking for that commission check, but at the end of the day, you know, I think at that time it was the right move. And like I said before, like the lessons I've learned from that have definitely made me a profoundly more educated artist, and brought me a lot of opportunities just in terms of you know, building the creativity and building, keep on like paving the way for just a sound that doesn't pigeonhole you into one genre, you know?
Yeah. So from all your experience, what advice would you give to young artists now that are trying to climb in that ladder?
Work, 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 work. You know, whether it's, I got young guns in my DMs asking about equipment, and I'm like, dude, literally, you know, this is the first thing I started with. I don't even know where it is. Oh, here it is. This. It's called the Focusrite Scarlet. Did I Hate College? Bunch of joints on there. And, you know, just like work and find out your sound before the world finds it out and kind of like picks it for you, because you always want to be in control of your creative, you know, workflow and vibe. Like for someone to choose your own lane for you probably sucks. And, you know, and also try to stay off like socials and your phone and things like that. Like wake up in the morning and do 2 hours of like writing, or, you know, 2 hours of, not even 2 hours, it could be 30 minutes of like writing. Always keep a journal, like with everything, with your phones and all that shit. Like it's important to write down things that you wouldn't normally, you know, you normally would just have a thought in your head and poof, it goes out. But, you know, writing things down in a journal, being, you know, appreciative, having gratitude towards anyone and everyone that listens to your music, you know, that's a big thing. And really just kind of carving out what you are obsessed with about your sound, because, you know, to have like a certain sound that people kind of, you know, put you in that lane when you don't want to be there isn't a fun place to be. So, you know, you have this time to build as an artist and build as just a human in general, and it's all in your hands right now. So whatever you want the world to hear is up to interpretation, and you're behind the wheel, you know. So you're whipping the car right now. So keep it that way for as long as you can. You know, when you see business opportunities, take them. Always take advice. In my opinion, one of the things I wish I did way back in the day when I was coming up is just listen more. Listen more, ask more questions, be super curious, and just don't be a know-it-all. No need to drop names, especially the people that are 50 fucking times bigger than you. You know, and just keep it all a stack. And you know, if you believe in your music, there will be people that believe in your music, but also make people fall in love with you as a person, not just music.
Yeah, I think that's key too. So for you now, I mean, I know you had a new song come out recently, Drip, which I thought was pretty good.
Thanks.
So you said you're co-writing, you're doing the Apple show. Like, what else are you working on right now? And what do you find yourself that you love doing the most right now?
A lot of the co-writes have been amazing. Working with like phenoms, Stu from Atlanta, who's the man, Fredro, who's literally, I just found out, lives 3 blocks away from me, and we've been doing Zoom calls. So it's like, bro, it's like, I'm just gonna come over next time. The co-writes have been amazing, because it's like, you know, it takes a little pressure off of your shoulders for, you know, as an artist and having a fan base and expectations and stuff, you sometimes are a little precious with like your own shit, with your own content, and music, and co-writing and just like writing over someone else's joint for like, whether it's a Star show or a show on HBO or whatever, you don't have your own like pretentious little, you know, angel and devil on your shoulder. So it's kind of like a free ride, like it's a free for all. And you know, it's easier to write for other people, in my opinion, especially like doing features and stuff. But yeah, it's been a really cool process for my whole writing thing, because then you take those and then you realize that you don't have to be so precious with your stuff when you're recording new music. So there's probably 2 albums in the vault already, and then probably another 2 from like 3-4 years ago that never got released. So we got plenty of firepower.
That's
I
good.
got a show on Friday that we're gonna play a bunch of new shit. So so we're super excited, and just trying to just carve a new lane in terms of all these new TikTok, Triller, Instagram story type shit, to basically just make it as natural as possible. Like, we don't want to force records on anybody. We just want to make great records. And everything takes time. So it's been a learning process, but I think there's a lot of stigmas with a lot of social media stuff, and I don't really pay attention to any of that, because, to be honest, however you blow up is however you blow up, and most of the time you probably don't have a say in that, unless you like dancing in front of mirrors and it gets millions of views. So that sometimes that works.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're enjoying working with other people. It kind of takes the pressure off, gets the ego out of it. For you now, if you could work with any artist, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh man.
Or more than one?
I would say dead or alive. Definitely number one is Jimi Hendrix. Jimi Hendrix, Big L, Daft Punk, Justice, and
it's all over the place.
Yeah, and like the Supremes and the Temptations. That'd be cool.
That would be cool.
But yeah, all types. I mean, I've kind of used this time in COVID too to just like listen to the oldies and listen, find a lot of new music too. But like I never would have found like Crewing Band if like I wasn't working at Apple Music. So a lot of cool stuff coming out that doesn't necessarily fit the mold of like 2020, 2021.
Yeah.
But that's the thing, like with creativity and with creatives, it's the mold is always there to be broken. So
okay. And then what I think I have just a couple more questions I didn't get to. And you already answered like the first one. I was gonna ask who your biggest inspirations were like growing up. I think you mentioned like Nas and Jay-Z, or who are you listening to the most that kind of inspired your style, you think?
Such a mix, like Lauryn Hill, the Fugees, Neptune, Supremes, Temptations, and then like there's a more kind of classic rock side of it, like Steve Miller Band, the Eagles, obviously Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin. But like a lot of the stuff that I paid the most attention to was the more like soul, R&B, hip hop side of things. So like The Score by the Fugees is like just one of the greatest pieces of music all time for me. And I can just like still visualize like listening to it on a boombox, like in the schoolyard with a bunch of the homies. And then Big L, just because of wordplay, like and Mad Ho's Ass Beavis, I Get Nothing Butthead. Like that's an insane line. Like I don't know how you freestyle that off the top of your head. It's like impossible. But yeah, so like those are just a couple. Like I'm like if you had to like pick a meme for my influences, it'd be fucking Homeboy from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Like
yeah, it sounds like your music's all over the place. You just love music as a whole. It comes from everywhere.
Exactly.
Well, that's pretty much all the questions I have for you. My last one out of curiosity is, I know your rap name changed a little bit. I think you started as someone like Wiz or something, and then it went from like Sam Adams to Sammy Adams. What was that process of making your rap name? And because your full name is what, Samuel Adams Wisner?
Samuel Adams Wisner, yeah. Wiz is just like what all the homies call me, like my day ones. So Wiz is like my nickname. My brother's name is B Wiz, so I was always either Little Wiz or Little Wizzy. So Wiz just came about, and then once we started playing shows, and Khalifa hit like a year and a half before me, so I was like, okay. So changed it to Sam Adams. I wanted to keep it like super government name. My mother and father call me Sammy, so it was an easy switch from Sam Adams to Sammy Adams.
Was there any backlash from the beer? Like any Like having the.
No, we actually almost did a project together until one of my partners fucking ruined it. We were gonna do like a like light beer, which would have been super fucking sick.
It's not too late.
Yeah, never too late for anything. But yeah, there wasn't any backlash really at all. I think a lot of people like assimilate Sam Adams changing to Sammy Adams for, and like, I'm not speaking in third person, just saying like the actual thing. Like, well, here I am. But you know, I think a lot of people like assimilate that and kind of like keep it synonymous with going to a major label and then making Sammy Adams. And it's like, you know, on Driving Me Crazy in 2010, I think 2011 we put it out. I say Sammy Adams right in the beginning. Like most of the tags on it are Sammy Adams. So it's an interesting thing because people, it's like such a minute detail. But
well, it's because for me, like as a fan, right, I have your music, and then like the first couple songs are saved to Sam Adams, and the next one's Sammy Adams. So I can't just play the artist Sam Adams. I'm like, oh, this is annoying. Like can you just pick one name?
That's honestly one of the best fucking points I've heard about it.
That's
but
like,
yeah, it's like it's funny because it's like, you know, those, like it's such a small, like minute detail in terms of like what, like how I think of it, but you know, it's you know, it's like I'm just thankful I don't have like a Lil before the Sammy or something. So, you know, at least you don't have to scroll through the 9 million Lils there are these days.
Yeah, you go. Well, that's all the questions I got for you, man. I appreciate you coming on. Before I let you go, where can the people find you, like on social media, any projects you have coming out soon that you want to let the people know about?
Yeah, well, I mean, have projects dropping probably all the way through summer, mostly singles, and then maybe a project in the fall. All piecing that together now. About to start a campaign with Twitch, which is kind of just like making music on Twitch and being in the studio and reviewing music and doing all types of shit like that. Find me on Instagram at Sammy Adams, SammyAdams. Same thing on Twitter, same thing on Facebook. So run it up, let's get it. And dude, thank you so much for having me on the show. I appreciate it.
Thank you, man. And that's a show. Let's